Hey friend, are you asking yourself, is this what I really want to be doing with my life? I don't think so. I think there's something else that I'm meant to be doing. Welcome to the Painting Your Path podcast, where we have real conversations about what it takes to step out, be bold, and do you. I'm your host, Clarissa Castillo-Ramsey. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Clarissa Castillo-Ramsey. And before we dive into today's interview with Jaime Townzen, I just wanted to share one more time that my Art of Becoming group program is starting next week, the week of June 16th. And it's really a program for you if you've been asking yourself, I feel like there's more to this life. I'm not sure what it is, but I'd like to do something about it. Or perhaps you've got a passion project that's been stirring inside of you, but you aren't really sure which way to go. Or maybe you simply want to tap back into joy and self-expression. This creative embodiment 6-week program could be just what you're looking for. And I'll have the link with more information in the show notes. And today I'm joined by the incredibly talented Jaime Townzen, a Southern California-based writer and professional watercolor artist whose journey through grief, healing, and self-expression will move you deeply. Jaime lost 8 loved ones in the span of 6 years. And it was through watercolor, journaling, and curiosity that she found her way back to herself. She's now painting on the regular. She's a published author, and she's living proof that when you lean into your creativity, even in the messy middle of life, you can come out the other side more connected, more alive, and more you than ever. If you've ever told yourself, I'm not really an artist, or I'm not creative, or perhaps felt the heaviness of life was getting in the way of your being, this episode is your sign to pause and listen. And although this is my first time meeting Jaime, she truly is a true embodiment of what I like to talk about in the art of becoming. So if her journey resonates with you, I encourage you to check out the details of my Art of Becoming program in the show notes. So let's dive in now and tune into my conversation with Jaime Townzen. Welcome, Jaime, to the Painting Your Path podcast. It's such an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, Clarissa. I'm so honored to be here with you today.
And I'm so excited to dive into your journey because you and I have so many, I think, parallel life situations going on. But before we get into that, could you just share a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
I'd be glad to. So I am a Southern California mom of 2 teenage daughters. And my journey, the short form of my journey is that from 2014 until 2020, our family went through a pretty rough patch of where we lost 8 loved ones in those 6 years. And I had given up my career to be a stay-at-home mom. And by the time the pandemic hit, I was just really buzzing through my whole body with anxiety and grief and having a hard time processing those feelings. I think a lot of us were having a hard time in 2020, but because I had had so many years leading into it, I just felt so overwhelmed and not like myself at all. Definitely not the version of myself that I wanted to be in this life and in my role as a mom. And so in July of 2020, I on a whim, after trying, I had gone through lots of therapy, wonderful therapists. I had wonderful, good friends who I spent time talking to. I would take long walks and listen to all sorts of books, especially nonfiction books. I love fiction, but I was trying to find self-help books that would help me through things. And it wasn't until in July of 2020 that I found watercolor through an online ad for free online watercolor classes, that I finally found the peace that my body was needing. And that first, I didn't get it quite in that first 20 minutes or 30-minute little tutorial that I was doing, but I definitely found joy in that experience. And as I did it more and more, painted watercolors, maybe once a week and then once a day for short periods of time, and then I would spend a couple of hours every day, I found that anxiety and grief and stress that I was carrying inside of me would just evaporate. It would melt away, and the time that I spent painting was almost like meditative for me. And I really experienced so much calm. My breath normalized, my heart rate normalized, and I was painting beautiful things and finding so much joy. And that truly, when I heard about your podcast, it was so funny to me because I truly did paint my path back to myself
Oh,
and my goals for who I wanted to be and to the person I knew I was inside, but that grief and stress had ripped away from me. So yeah, watercolor was the entry point back to who I am.
oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And prior to that, um, were you a creative child? I'm just curious, like, was there any kind of creativity in your bones before the watercolor?
I was definitely always creative, and I always called myself crafty. I
Love
had a
it.
lot, I had a lot of artists in my family, really well trained artists, and so I was comparing what I was just naturally doing in creative, crafty ways to some really talented people. My grandmother, my aunt, my stepsister, my aunt's boyfriend for a long time was a very well-renowned artist. And so I never took any real formal art education classes on technique or anything like that. And even after starting watercolor in my, I was at the point in 2020, I was 41 years old. um,
Yes.
I didn't think I could call myself an artist for another couple of years, even when I was painting every single day and people were offering to buy my artwork. It didn't matter. I wasn't ready to call myself an artist until, I really had to have a mind shift and accept that. So, yes, I've always been creative, but it's only been the last few years that I've been willing to call myself an artist.
That is so beautiful that you found watercolor. And for me, it's the same watercolor acrylic paint, just painting has been my ultimate self-care tool.
Mhm.
And but it's interesting because my father passed away at the end of April.
Hmm.
And when I went home to go to Texas to be with my parents and family, I brought my paints and I thought for sure I would be painting every day. It was so hard for me to do it because of the grief. I think I was there for a month and I think I painted two or three little pieces, which is fine, but it's just interesting. I thought for sure I'd be painting every day. And I want to just ask you, losing eight people in that short time span, I can't imagine. So I'm so thankful that you found art and painting. Could you also share with us for those who, like myself, like I'm new on this journey? I love this is like a person who meant so much in my life. this is a kind of grief that I have never experienced. So
Mhm.
I would love to hear from you. Like, how else did you work through a messy part of life?
Absolutely. And I can really, it really resonates with me because I did also lose my biological father and my stepfather during those 8 losses that we had, along with my stepsister. And when I say stepsister, most people have this vision of what a stepsister is like, but my 2 stepsisters have been in my life my entire life since I was 4 years old. And we share all the same 4 parents, so they are my sisters. And so when my stepsister passed away at age 50, and I had just turned 40, it was that one was the one that hit me the hardest, by far, because it was sort of it was against the rules, you know. You aren't
Right.
supposed to be a young mom, like, or a mom of teenagers and lose your life. But in her case, she had ALS for 7 years, and it was watching her slowly decline for 7 years was heartbreaking for all of us. But even I lost my mother-in-law just in February, so your experience of saying you thought that you would be able to watercolor your way through the grief resonates so much with me because I expected when that time would come that my mother-in-law would pass, I would be able to do the same thing. And you're right. At first, it's very difficult to find the creative headspace to put anything new down on a page. Um, I am somebody who since I found watercolor, I have daily self care activities that help with my emotional health and my mental health, which include journaling and include daily sketching in my sketchbook. And then I watercolor those sketches as well. But for the most part, the biggest ways that I have found, even before I found watercolor, to deal with the grief were some things that I learned from my therapist. And writing letters to these loved ones that you've lost has been so therapeutic to me because your heart and your mind are full of so many questions and things that went unsaid, and maybe even conversations you wish you had gotten a chance to have. And I know that we tell ourselves it's too late because they're gone, but I really personally feel that writing allows us to transcend time. There are words that move us that were written hundreds of years ago. Things we write today could move people 100 years from now. And somehow the act of writing those letters to my loved ones has been so therapeutic in my being able to find some more closure with them. Um, because, yeah, no matter how right or wrong the circumstances is, it's hard to lose someone we love. So yeah, my mother-in-law, who just passed in February, she had had a stroke in October, and it was 4 difficult months of watching her not live the life that she would have liked to keep living, and slowly declining also. And to be able to share with her in a letter form all of my thoughts around that, and my love for her, my desire for her to be at peace in her own body or in the world, like just in the spirit world, just to let go of the pain that she was carrying, and also how much I was going to miss, how much you know, a big part of grief is accepting the things that we planned for and don't get to have. And so in my case, my husband and I are both by far the youngest in our families, which means our children are young, which means that all of the parents that we've lost, they got to witness the other grandchildren graduating high school and graduating college and going to their weddings, maybe even having their first children. And our children are still growing. Our oldest just graduated high school last week. And my dad, my stepdad, my mother-in-law, none of them got to see that. None of them got to be a part of celebrating that stage of life. So letting yourself have the room to really express those things that you wish you had gotten to have them be part of, how important it would have been, and how you hope to carry their spirit through, maybe. In my case, my mother-in-law loved giraffes, and she had this collection of giraffe pins like that she would wear on her blazers and sweaters and stuff. And so the day we had her funeral, we all wore one. And then
Oh, it's
as I go
nice.
to these ceremonies, I'll put that giraffe pin on, and she's there with us in the best way we know how. And we remind our daughters, Grandma would be so proud of you right now. And it helps us all to feel a little better amidst the loss. So that's
That's
a big.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I have thought about doing that, and for whatever reason, I haven't done it yet. So thank you for giving me permission to do it. So that is something I'm going to do, is actually
Good.
write a letter to my dad. I've talked to him, but I think, and you're so right, there's something about pen to paper and moving it through your body that just feels a little more dynamic. So thank you. And I also want to bring up that when you started talking about writing, I know you're also a published author. So, and there's aspiring authors tuning into this podcast. So I'd love to also hear that story of what inspired you to write this book and why now.
I'd love to share that. And as I mentioned earlier, that finding that path back to me and my dreams and goals for myself, that's what that was. Before I ever um, got married, before I ever had kids, I had a goal of writing a novel and becoming a professional published author. And life, got in the way a little bit, or I chose other paths temporarily. I chose other roads to go down first. And so when I took up watercolor in 2020, not only did that grief and stress and anxiety melt away, but my brain started firing again on all the different creative pathways that were in there that had been shut down by those negative feelings. And as I started having all these creative ideas, I realized I was ready to write again. And not only just write, but I was a student of watercolor, and I wanted to be a student of writing again. I wanted to really dive in deep and understand all those things about characterization and plot and building a story from the ground up. And I went back to get my master's degree. I went back in July of 2021, and I finished by October of 2022. And my final project of my master's program was writing the first 10,000 words of a novel. And as I did that, I was fully ready, because at that point I had spent 2 solid years being a student of art and creating on a daily basis all day long. Yes, I was still a mom. Yes, I was still doing laundry and dishes and carpool pickup and all the things. But when my brain started thinking as an artist, thinking as a creator, thinking as a writer again, I had more capacity in me. I had more desire. I had more get up and go to accomplish these dreams. And so that first 10,000 words flew out, and I had, finished with honors. And then by January of 2023, I had written 90,000 words. And that first draft of the entire novel was finished. And by January of 2024, the whole revision was done, and I was starting to pitch it to publishers. And this January of 2025, I was officially able to call myself a published author, and my book is out in the world. The book that I chose to write for this first one, because it's just the beginning of my author journey, was, in the midst of being a mom and everything, I needed to know that I could get a whole story out that I knew well, that was familiar enough to me that I didn't have to give it all of my time and attention to be able to have it come out naturally, if that makes sense. Like if I was to
Yes.
create a whole new world, it might be a little harder, but I know teenage girls because I have two teenage girls, and I was a teenage girl. And a big part, so I think most of us have experienced since 2020, is there's a nostalgia for a time before. For
Yes.
me, my nostalgia really was for the 90s, the time before the cell phones and the internet existed, when teenagers could be teenagers without there being a record online of every single thing that they did, right? And so
Right.
I decided to write a coming of age novel about a teenage girl in the 90s, 1996 to be exact. And that was such a fun summer to dive back into, just doing a little bit of the research, digging in on, because I had my own memories of what concerts I went to and what movie premieres I went to, but also things that I had forgotten about or I hadn't really thought about in a long time. Like that was the Olympics in Atlanta, and that there were Planned Parenthood bombings happening then, and that, you know, those kinds of fights were happening now in America. And it started to really become obvious to me that teenagers now are dealing with the exact same problems that we as teenagers in the world in 1996 were dealing with, except they have these cell phones. So if I just strip that away, how much commonality is there? And it's so common. And so I wanted to write a novel that would connect the moms of today through their nostalgia for that time with their own daughters, to really open up dialogues about what it means to have sexual consent, what it means to live your life on your own terms and for your own personal goals, what it means to really be an empathetic parent and help your child through the bad choices that almost every teenager is going to make, mistakes, and how are you going to respond to those mistakes as a parent. So I got to dialogue in this story, and then now I'm seeing it, and it's so wonderful. As book clubs are reading my book, mother-daughter book clubs are having these discussions, and even boy moms are asking me, like, you know, how great, or telling me how great it is that I wrote this, because they were reminded of what it was like to be a teenage girl and afraid to say no to that boy. And they're having those conversations with their son, like, not saying no is not the same as actually saying yes. So like they're having these really important conversations. So it's been such a wonderful journey, and I am so happy with how it came out. And I got to employ my artwork in the cover. I actually
I
designed the
love
cover
it.
too. And so it's been such a wonderful journey to get to the point of it actually being a printed novel, for sure.
My gosh, congratulations again.
Thank
And
you.
what an important book to have for people to read. So, yeah, I'm just in awe of how your creativity continues to blossom. And I'm just curious, do you have plans for a next book? Is it too soon to say that? I know your book just came out. Like, what do you think of all of that?
Well, not to skip ahead a little bit, but you know, I know you've had on a lot of your episodes lately talking about the messy middle, right? And like
Yes.
you're going through your own grief right now. I am going through my own grief with the passing of my mother-in-law and what that meant for our family in terms of selling her house. But I'm also in a messy stage, just that my stepfather passed in 2020, and we had to sell my mother's house this year. She could no longer afford to live there and move her into a retirement community. And so that just happened 3 weeks ago. And last week, my daughter
Wow.
graduated high school, and we're going to high school or to college orientation in New York City on Monday. And in 3 months, she'll be living in New York City. So we're preparing for that. So I have big ideas, but my life is hard to do these things right now. You know, even just the act of publicity around a book, a first time author has a lot of responsibility with trying to sell their book. And Absorbed
Right.
has done very well for a first time author. I'm really pleased with how it's been received, but I could be doing so much more. So all that to say, I do have a vision in my head of a next book that I hope to really get underway after that kid is off at college. But it's just been hard. It's really
Right.
been hard right now.
One
So
thing at a time, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And gosh, similar to you, my father passed away. My mother is by herself in a big home, and we're having to plan our next phase. And it's tough because she's in Texas and
Yeah.
my brother and I are here in California. My sister's in New York, so we're kind of like all over the place. And I guess like I would love to ask you, since I'm in this messy middle too,
Mhm.
like what, and I'm sure people listening can relate. And if they're not there yet, it's going to happen. Like life
Mhm.
continues. And so, what can you share about that journey that could help our audience?
Oh, it has been such a journey, and I really hope it goes well for you. I think, you have to give yourself grace as you're grieving. That's going to be true for all of your siblings, but also for your mom. This is going to be a hard step for her, I'm sure. And um, my mom loved the house she was in. It was a 4,000 square foot house, though, for one person
Yeah.
in the foothills of the San Bernardino Mountains on 5 acres, which anybody who's familiar, as you are, with what the foothills of any of our mountains are, it is high fire danger
Yes.
area. And 5 acres is, no matter where you live in Southern California, going to have a lot of dry brush. And so um, I've been very afraid for her being by herself there. There have been many close calls just in the last 9 months, even at her house. But getting her to the point where, with her grief, she was willing to accept moving on. I mean, as of the time she moved out, she had lived in that house for 26 years and she had so many memories there and so many family Christmases. And to let go of that, it took her a very long time to be ready. But she also understood that financially it wasn't feasible anymore. I
Yeah.
do hope you and your siblings don't find yourself in the same position that we did. My husband and I had to be paying her bills the last 9 months because she was officially out of money. And unfortunately, we're in an economy right now where our elderly are not being taken care of well by our government, and they're losing more and more of the money that they expected to have available to them. And that reality was not something that we could put off any longer. She had to move because we have to start paying college bills. We can't pay for
Right.
our house and her house and college bills. There's a
I
limit to
know.
how much we can
Yeah.
do. So
Especially
just really
here.
having grace with everybody involved and trying to be patient, but also I did have to get my mom on Rocket Money and sort of show her, like, financially, where she was at and what her expenses needed to look like. And it just took a long time for her to be willing to pare down her belongings and really move from living in a house where, I mean, 8 people could have lived easily with all
Right.
she had, and to only have the belongings that one person really needs. She's still not quite there. The place she moved into is way overstuffed, and she's still getting rid of stuff. So it's hard. It takes a long time. Just be patient and give everybody grace. And yeah, it is
Yeah.
messy. Life is messy, and there's no way
Yes.
out of it. We're all going to go through losing our parents, losing our loved ones, and having to deal with the aftermath of the houses and the belongings. And it's an unfun experience in life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. And yeah, I think everything in time. And I feel like it's a balance of respecting everybody's space, but also having some sort of a plan
Hmm.
uh, and just talking about it. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I think
Um,
respecting everybody's time and space as much as you
yes,
can, but having a plan, like a rough idea of maybe, that was one thing for a couple of years. We would say, okay, let's try to make the most of this Christmas in this house, because this probably is going to be your last Christmas in this house, and enjoy it, love it, And then after Christmas is done, like you aren't going to need a 12-foot Christmas tree anymore. So we will sell it right after Christmas. You can not even put it back up in the attic. Like, let's just
Yes.
try to go through it seasonally like that and come up with a plan is helpful. So
Oh, that's great. I love that. I love that. Well, Jamie, is there anything else you'd like to share that we have not talked about yet?
I think, I would just like to share with your listeners that, when I look back on that time in my life where things just felt so dark and scary and overwhelming, and like I couldn't find that way back to me. If someone had told me right then, well, you're an artist, really, you have no idea inside of you, there's an artist in there, I wouldn't have listened. But when I do, I recently heard someone say on another podcast I was listening to, they said, um, anxiety is the body's reaction to fear, and the antidote to fear is curiosity. And when you think about how we as human beings express curiosity, it is through exploration and creativity. That is how our bodies express. So if your body is expressing anxiety to you, expressing stress, consider how that is a response to fear. And if you could turn your focus just to some sort of curiosity, go on a hike to explore your local, parks or trails, or explore an aquarium, or explore a new kind of creativity like watercolor, like drawing, like flower pressing, something that turns your brain away from that natural response to fear and towards a natural response like curiosity that's going to bring you joy. And I promise, even 15 minutes a day can change your whole perspective and help you find that path to the person that you really do want to be, the person who doesn't live as if every day is overwhelming and stressful.
Amen. I love that because that's so much of what I like to share too is like, how can we get out of our overthinking brains and how can we quiet down and creativity? There's so much research coming out that's been out, like just talking about the evidence of how 20 minutes of doodling, 45 minutes of doing a craft, and what that can do to your body, to your senses, and to your anxiety. So thank you so much. Well
Mm-hmm.
said. Well said. Well, Jamie, in this part of the podcast, I like to pivot to what I call rapid fire questions, if you're open to that, so the audience can
Of
get to
course,
know you
yes.
even more. So I don't know about you, but I tend to have a word or phrase of the year, and I'm just curious if you have a word for, at the time of this recording, it's 2025.
Yes, for 2025, because I going into 2025, I knew my book was coming out, and I knew we were selling my mom's house, and I knew my mother-in-law was sick, and I knew my daughter was graduating high school, and I knew my other daughter was getting her driver's license. So much was happening this year that my word for this year is present. And it's just anything that I can do to be present in the here and now and really absolutely soak up the time that I have with my babies, time that I have with my husband, time that I have on this earth. And so that might be, while I'm on a walk, I try to be really present and enjoying the stage that the trees are in. Like right now, my jacaranda is just covered in purple blossoms that are just raining down
Oh,
all over my yard.
beautiful.
And every day I try to really embrace that and just enjoy it, take pictures of it, try and paint it. And yeah, whatever it takes to really be present in the moment. That's my goal this year. I would love to say I sold 1,000 books, but whatever the case may be, I am a published author, and those books will sell themselves eventually. And I'm going to be present and let that be more my goal this year.
I love it. I love it. And with your watercolors, is there a certain subject that you like to paint? Is it abstract? What's your kind of favorite thing to paint?
I don't do a whole lot of abstract. I do enjoy abstract. I paint a lot of florals. I paint a lot of beach scenes, especially. I live near the coast here in Southern California, and even on spring break, being present, I was painting while we were in the Dominican Republic. I was painting wherever I was. If I was by the pool, I was painting the scene by the pool. If I was on my little patio, I was painting the hibiscus that was right there next to me on the patio. And so I am drawn towards tropical subjects, but this time last year I was in France, and so I was painting what I was seeing in France. So I love landscapes, I love florals, and I love just what is beautiful around me in the world, the natural world that I can enjoy, and also the physical world that our human hands have made, like beautiful architecture. I love and embracing just how we as humans can make this world more beautiful instead of the ways that we detract from the beauty of it.
Oh, I
So,
love that. Thank you. And what is one of your favorite spots in Southern California?
oh gosh, there's so many. I love and I always have loved La Jolla a lot. But
Beautiful.
in your area, I lived up where you live, and in your area, I absolutely loved going to the Descanso Gardens and the
Yes.
Huntington Library because I have always been drawn to those flowers, those plants, and walking through them in the different seasons. So Pasadena and Altadena are always going to hold a special place in my heart too.
Oh, I love those spots too. Very
Yeah.
much, very much. What is some of the best advice you've ever received that you'd like to impart on our audience?
I think the best advice I've ever received, um, and I include it as sort of a life lesson for my main character Stacy in the book Absorbed that I wrote, is be true to you. Whoever you are, be true to that person inside you that exists no matter where you are in the world, that exists no matter who you're surrounded by. Be true to that person inside of you, because that spark of who you are was created with a purpose in this world, and it's a purpose that brings you joy and others joy when it's authentically followed. So in my case, I needed to paint to find myself back as the writer that I always wanted to be and the creative person that I always naturally was. But whatever you have to do to be true to that person inside of you, I just encourage you to follow that for sure.
Oh, love that. Well said. And I couldn't agree more. And Jamie, where is the best place for people to connect with you if they want to learn more about you?
The best way to learn more about me is at jamietownsend.com. And I hope you have it in the show notes because my
Yes.
names are not spelled the way that anybody else. It's Jamie like Jaime, so Jaime, and then Townsend is Townzen. But jamietownsend.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and Threads. But if you go to my website, you'll find everything about my book. You'll find all the connections to all the different social media stuff. And you can absolutely send me a message anytime. I love to connect with anybody about my journey. And I'm so grateful to have this chance to connect with you about it, Clarissa, because I think I know that I was so blessed to find watercolor when I did. And I hope, however, and I'm so grateful for how you're helping mentor people to find whatever it is that takes them back to the path that they're meant to be on.
Yes, thank you so much. And the last question I have for you, which I ask all of my guests, is the name of this podcast is Painting Your Path. What does painting your path mean to you?
It absolutely, for me, it means painting every single day so that I live in that joyful creative space that brought me back to who I am. So for me, it actually is painting. It definitely
I
is.
love it.
But but that is a watercolor path that I hope to follow for the rest of my life for sure.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Jamie, for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Clarissa. I have loved our conversation.
Me too. And thank you so much to our listeners. Thanks for tuning in. And as I always like to say, tell us what your biggest takeaway is. Connect with Jamie And until next time, keep painting your path. Bye for now. Thank you so much for staying till the very end. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend. If you haven't had a chance yet, please write a review and rate the show. I would love to hear your feedback. And I also have a free resource guide for anybody who is asking themselves, am I on the right path for myself now? Or is there something else that I really want to do? Maybe you're in that quandary. Maybe you're wondering what's next. So head over to the show notes and you'll see my Painting Your Path framework guide. Download it and have some fun. Just start exploring. And thank you again for tuning in, and I will see you next week.